Hello, Marketsmith development team. My name is Ken Simpson. Amy Smith put out a call to action in the meetup groups for people that would like to contribute suggestions for improvements to Marketsmith. And I've got several. If you ask in the meetup groups, the Petaluma meetup group and others, you'll find that people perhaps have hundreds of suggestions for improvements that they'd like to see to make this more useful. I've got a few I'd like to go over here if I had more warning and took a couple of weeks to write down the things that I would like to see improved. I'd have a much longer list. But let's just go through this from the beginning here and see what we can come up with. Here's the first thing that's you see that's obvious is I've been able to color code these columns. This is a Chrome browser extension, but I'd like to see this where a user could set their preference for scoring directly in Marketsmith, and it makes it much quicker to scan. I can scan for the red or the green easily and find the defects in each stock. It's most of your users, if they're scoring these, they have to export this, import it into Excel or Google Sheets, color code it there. Look at things. It should be way easier to use. In the 21st century, this should be directly done right in the software. No need to go do all the exports and so forth. And while we're on the exports, I would like to be able to select the column of the symbols here directly, maybe with a command click or something like that, to be able, just like in a spreadsheet where I can select this column, where I don't have to go export this as a CSV and then go open up a CSV to be able to select the stock symbols in my scan. Okay, should be easy to do with a shift click or command click or some kind of a thing here, control click, to be able to select those directly. Now, I've standardized the columns in your column headers. You've got percents in different places and so forth. I've standardized the names. I've been able to put my preference for score, see greater than 20, and so forth on these. So I don't have to go remember my rules. I can just go look here. I've added a couple columns. Many of the members use an ROE plus PTM right here. I've done that in addition. Most importantly, I put in a stock checkup flaw column with a score. Stock checkup, of course, from investors.com, but I've been able to put the score directly in here and color code it. Very helpful. I can immediately scan the ones with too many stock checkup flaws. The little subscripts here that you see, that's a daily liquidity value. Love to see that. Doesn't have to go down here in a column. That should probably go up here in this blank space. Daily liquidity, the way I've defined it, is today's price times the average volume. But that gives you you can put in a green and a red or up or down arrows or something to show you that it would be a user preference, but something, say, greater than or less than $10 million of daily liquidity or something like that would be very helpful. Okay, I've also been able to color code the earnings release here. Here you see green arrow. That means it has at least 3/4 of acceleration in the earnings growth. I have red arrows if there's none on this particular stock, but red arrows if it has 2/4 of decelerating earnings growth. Quick glance tells you if their earnings are accelerating or decelerating. Don't have to go down in here and do the math. All right, it's right there. It's simple to add. I've added it simply in this Chrome browser extension, but it would be real easy for you to add. Another thing is I would love to see, if you look at the bottom of your yellow box here, I've been able to put in an arrow count. If you drag across any date selection, it counts the arrows. There's 3 down arrows, 4 down arrows. It has acceleration accumulation distribution count 5. It's got 6 accelerating, 1 support, 2 it's 6 accumulation, 1 support, and 2 distribution days. As you drag across here, it keeps track of your arrow count. Very helpful. Okay, I've got a way to chart the earnings and sales growth for a stock. That should be directly on the chart. You should be able to click a button. I know your chart gets busy, but you could toggle on and off a button that shows you your earnings and sales growth directly on there. Let's see here. I'd like to see if the funds participating in the stock are growing or shrinking. That could be a column or possibly another arrow up here, up or down for fund accumulating or distributing the stock. You have to go here and look at the funds and guess. Of course, it's stale data anyway, but in this case, funds are increasing their participation in Alibaba. It would be nice to be able to see that at a glance somewhere. Up or down arrow up here would be perfect. Okay. And then the other thing, the most important thing for me, for many users, is a much more sophisticated alert system. This is rather primitive. Well, first let's talk about this. You've put this pink here. This represents -5 to 7% loss from the pivot point. Of course, the rule from how to make money in stocks is your 7% stop loss is from your purchase price. That's a portfolio protection stop loss. And you don't know, of course, what person's paid for this, so you have to put it down here. But that pink zone should be flexible based on that person's purchase price. It'd be really nice to be able to do this. And I've put together a much more sophisticated alert system than this. This is rather primitive. And what I'd like to see is you can go to your what I call a cell rule sandbox. I've created a video on this. If you'd like to see this, it's rather simple. It basically just creates both time and price sell targets for the stock. There is, at a certain time, the stock will be sold regardless. You have a sell rule for every price or time attribute that can happen. So here's a cell rule sandbox. Okay. Of course, you can save it as a template. User can save it as a template so they don't have to type so much. But in this case, a pivot point would be filled in from pattern recognition, or a person could type it in directly, whether or not they want to use the 10% add-on. Each purchase a person makes, they click the add new purchase button and it puts in the buys here. You put in the buy price that you actually paid, whether or not you want to be alerted at 7% or whatever your percentage stop loss is. And most of the time these would be turned on by default. Of course, your template would save that, but every time you make a purchase, buy B1, B2, B3, your add-on purchase, you put in your price here and you can set an alert for each purchase automatically. You don't have to go in and calculate -7% of $86.78 and then go set an alert and put that in and do the same thing over and over again. It's done automatically. Okay, you created a stop loss sandbox for each of those purchases. Now, you've also got alerts that 20 to 25% above. Usually that would be the pivot, but an alert to go off automatically here on the green. Alert to go off 7% below the pivot. Alert to go off, down here automatically. You get the alert regardless of what you paid for it, which is a separate alert. You've also got time-based alerts. Very important, very helpful at least. Here you've got the 8 and 13 weeks from the pivot. Those are some rules that you see in some of the seminars and so forth. But anyway, we don't get it to go forward here in Marketsmith and put in vertical lines or any kind of time-based alert system. It's impossible. You have to wait for 8 weeks to go by or 7 or so weeks to go by and draw in these lines. It'd be nice to set in the time-based alerts directly here. But it'd be really nice to have some other sell rules, like here's one: decline a certain percentage from the peak while you're in the stock and it declines from the peak. Regardless of your other sell rules, you should know that one. Whether or not you want other sell rules like the certainty sell rule exception. Okay, you can turn that on or off. There are others. You can add other alerts and so forth in here. But a much more sophisticated alert system and much easier to use than this, where you have to go in and use your calculator and figure out a price and go in and set an alert. The other thing is when you do set an alert, it would be really nice to be able to use a calculator here in this box, put in $110.25, whatever, times 1.25 directly. It'd be nice to be able to just put a little arithmetic in there. It's really easy to do in code, but a person doesn't have to go open up their calculator and type and so forth directly there. Anyway, I'm sure I could think of a lot more things to go over, but for now, that does it. I'd love to see this much more sophisticated alert system and color coding down here. Those would be the important things. Anyway, that's it. If you have any questions, you can email back. And if you want to see the cell rule sandbox video, I can send you that as well. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you're serious about improving these because your members have a lot of suggestions. And thanks for asking.